Before we ride into this story, hit like and subscribe. Thank you. Heat. Just heat. Hill. 352. At first, it sounded like a grid square, a sterile little math problem the map guys could argue over. I didn't understand it was a place with a personality, a place that breathed hot air back in your face and dared you to keep climbing. We'd been hearing about the enemy up there for days. North Vietnamese regulars dug in tight, disciplined, confident, a whole company, maybe more. The hill wasn't even one clean peak. It had little shoulders and knobs of higher ground off to the sides, like extra teeth in a trap. You could take the top and still get chewed up from angles you didn't see coming. We started up in a long, winding line, sweating through our shirts before we'd made any real elevation. The jungle wasn't quiet. It was loud in that way that hides everything. Cicadas screaming, branches creaking, the dull thump of your own heartbeat. Near the top, the shooting began. That was my first taste of what I call gut-wrenching fear. Not the movie kind, not the I'm scared but I'm brave kind. This was your stomach turning to cold water and your brain trying to climb out of your skull to get away. The kind of fear that feels like it has teeth, but it wouldn't be my last. Our platoon had a sergeant running point. Sergeant McCrae, can't remember his first name, older guy. Not old, but old enough to have lines around his eyes that didn't come from laughing. He had that rare ability to lead and function in any situation, like his mind had a gear nobody else owned. When the fire cracked in, I saw him rise up as if the bullets were an inconvenience. He moved straight toward them, firing down into a foxhole on his right. I think he truly believed, for at least one stretch of seconds, that he was bulletproof. Then he yelled at the rest of us to move up. I don't remember deciding. I just went. McCrae was ahead of me, 15 yards maybe less, breaking the enemy's perimeter like a man pushing through a door that didn't want to open. Two of our guys angled right with him, and I drifted left. I was carrying a shotgun then. At close range, it was brutal in a way that didn't feel like skill. It felt like gravity. Out on open ground, it was nothing special, almost laughable compared to rifles. But up there, fighting foxhole to foxhole, where the world was a series of holes in red dirt and split roots and torn leaves, it could be devastating. I moved along the top until I saw a hole, or I saw movement. If a head rose, I squeezed the trigger. There's no poetry in that. Just a short, hard action, and the kick in your shoulder, and the way your mind tries to keep up with what your body already did. Eventually, I reached a bigger hole, covered over with boards and planks, reinforced like a crude bunker. It looked like a command post, or at least someone's idea of one. For a moment, I stopped there, almost unsure what to do next, because that's what happens when you reach the center of something. Your instincts scream, finish, but your nerves whisper, don't look inside. A soldier I barely knew, Morales, a Spanish guy, appeared next to me as if he'd been cut out of the air. I told him, I think there's people down in that hole. He leaned in, peered into the small opening, and said casually, like we were fixing a fence back home, let's drop a grenade down there. He pulled the pin and stepped toward a gap just big enough for a hand grenade, and right then something happened that made my stomach turn cold. An RPG round, just the tip, rose up through the opening. For one frozen second, everything stopped. My thoughts, my breath, the jungle sound. It was like the world had been paused by a thumb on a switch. Morales didn't hesitate. He simply dropped the grenade in. Then there was silence afterward that felt sickening. A silence that didn't mean peace. It meant the air was waiting to see what shape it would take next. When we finally took the hill, night came down hard. The kind of dark that isn't just no light, but a thick thing you can feel pressing on your cheeks. We used the same foxholes we'd cleared for cover because there was nowhere else to go. Dirt under your nails, sweat drying into salt, your canteen warm as bathwater, and then, out of nowhere, an enemy soldier popped up from a hole we hadn't found. He stood there for a split second like a man waking from a nightmare. His face had that raw, shocked look, as if he couldn't believe the dream had teeth. He realized where he was and started running. We all just kind of stared as he disappeared into the dark. It's still strange to me. Nobody reacted. No one raised a rifle. No one shouted. It was like the whole platoon had reached some invisible limit and just watched him go. The way you watch a bad thought leave your head. Somewhere out there, he lived. And I've always wondered if he made it home carrying a story no one would believe. A story about waking up inside your own perimeter and finding it no longer belonged to you. What I remember most from that hill is how scared they looked when they realized they were being overrun. Those enemy soldiers probably believed the hill could be defended. They probably figured we'd break and slide back down like water off rock. But once you're inside a perimeter, the psychology flips. The defenders stop being owners and start being trapped men. I saw one who was so terrified he didn't even raise his head. He just pushed his AK up above the lip of the hole and dumped a whole magazine on full auto, straight up into the trees. He didn't aim. It was pure panic, like he wanted to shoot the sky for letting this happen. I rolled a grenade into his hole and that was that. After Hill 352, I was drained down to the bones. That's when anger can set in. Not as a roar, but as a tightness. A heat behind your eyes. A feeling that if the world is going to be cruel, you might as well stop being soft. By April, we were making enemy contact constantly. It started to feel like the jungle itself was setting setting appointments with us. One day I was on point, walking an area I swear we'd passed through before. The air smelled like wet plants and old smoke, and everything was the same shade of green that makes distance hard to judge. We came to the edge of a clearing, and a rice paddy shaped like a peanut, wide on one end, narrow at a berm, then wide again. A little hooch sat down there, quiet, empty looking, like somebody had just stepped out and promised to be right back. My platoon sergeant, Winters, told me to cross the berm and move left. I crossed, but instead of standing up like I knew they expected, I stayed low in the paddy, using the bank as cover. I moved along the edge until I reached the hooch, and then, like idiots, we clustered up around it, the way men do when they're tired and want to pretend a moment is safe. I stepped about 10 feet down the trail and saw a foxhole at the edge. Someone was coming out of it. As he rose, I instantly thought, North Vietnamese. I don't know if I said it out loud or only inside my head. Time slowed down the way it does when your body recognizes danger before your mind is ready to accept it. I can still see the AK-47 coming up with him, like it was part of his spine. He was close. So close I could see details. Creases, dust, the shape of his hands, that later came back in dreams in pieces I couldn't control. My weapon was pointed away and his was almost up on me. I remember my eyes going wide with the shock of it, because you don't expect an enemy to rise out of the earth at your feet like a ghost. I knew he was beating me to the draw. I jumped behind the bank as shots snapped past me, sharp little cracks that sounded impossibly neat for something trying to kill you. Harlan fired. I don't know if he dropped him right then, but I popped back up and threw a grenade. I missed the hole. As I pulled the pin on another, I saw two arms up in the air sticking out, hands open, surrendering, or maybe just reaching for air. I hesitated for a fraction of a second that felt like a year and tossed the grenade anyway. Two enemy soldiers died in that hole that day. The day I got hit, we were moving on a wide trail, almost a road, like a bulldozer had cut it through the jungle and left the earth exposed and sore. And of course, I was on point. We started taking small arms fire. At first, it was scattered like someone tapping on a door. Then it became a full-on gunfight, loud enough that you couldn't hear your own thoughts anymore. And then, in an instant, my world changed forever. A bullet hit my spine and my legs went dead. Not numb, dead. Like the connection had been cut and my lower body belonged to someone else. I remember looking up and seeing the lieutenant get hit too. And I swear I saw 3 strikes on his side, like the air itself was punching him. He went down and the attack collapsed right there, as if the fight lost its shape the second leadership fell. Harlan killed the man who shot me. They lifted me in a poncho like a sack and carried me back while the fight faded behind us. The jungle sound came back in pieces. Someone shouting, a helicopter far off, a sudden quiet that felt wrong. What seemed like hours later, a medevac helicopter came in and took me and the lieutenant out of the Vietnam War. After that, it became a chain of hospitals and surgeries, mostly a blur. White lights, antiseptic, voices that sounded far away, time measured in pain and paperwork. Slowly, I got most of it back except my left leg from the knee down. I wore a brace for years, but I could move, and that's more than a lot of guys, so I am fortunate. I served with a light infantry company made up mostly of draftees. Ordinary men pulled from ordinary lives and thrown into an extraordinary place. Men who had never wanted to become symbols or stories. Men who just wanted to survive the day and maybe be the same person afterward. We spent a year walking the boonies trying to find the enemy. No rear area comforts, no long breaks, mostly heat, wet, hunger, fear, and boredom that could turn into chaos in half a second. And I'm proud of that company. I'm proud because those men did their jobs when it mattered. I'm proud because some of them did things that should have gotten them killed and somehow didn't. Others did get killed, and they live on in the only place that never gets shelled. Our thoughts, our prayers, the quiet moments when a smell or a sound drags you back without asking permission. People tell you to leave it all behind, let it all go. They say it like you can set it down the way you set down a pack. But war doesn't live in your hands, it lives in your nerves. It lives in the part of you that flinches before you know why. It's hard to convince people to change their minds about anything, especially when they've never stood in a foxhole at night, listening to the dark. It's hard to be kind when you've seen how quickly the world can become a place that doesn't care. Vietnam was a place where young men learned what they were capable of, good and bad. And then you spend the rest of your years figuring out what to do with that knowledge. Because the hill ends, the jungle ends, the shooting ends, but the remembering, that's the part you have to live with.